All right, everybody. Good Saturday morning. It is the day before game day here in Seattle. We are about 28 hours away from kickoff against the Steelers. So let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. Let's try to solve this one. It's a big game for both teams. It feels like a playoff game. Pittsburgh needs to win to keep their playoff chances alive. Seattle needs to win to continue to control their own destiny. So there's a lot on the line here. Both teams are going to bring it, or you would hope both teams would bring it at the very least. And nothing is going to come easy. So, what do we got to do in this one? The way I see it, we're going to have to find a way to take advantage of what Pittsburgh does not have in this game. They've got some real problems at the back end with the safeties that they're playing, and that bleeds over into their cornerbacks. They've got some issues with their interior linebackers. And we have to make the game about that. We have to make the game about those things because the other parts of this team are pretty good on defense. That defensive line, those edge rushers, that's really, really good stuff over there they got in Pittsburgh. And on offense, we got to make the game about their quarterback and their offensive line. They've got a backup quarterback in there. They've got an offensive line that has one standout player in Sumalo. Other than that, it's a bunch of guys who are just mediocre at best. Got to make the game about those guys. We got to make the game about the things that they're deficient in rather than the things that they're good in. Because there are some things that they do well. They've got some good receivers. They've got some good skill position players just in general. So that to me is the most important thing if we're just speaking broadly about this game. That's just X's and O's stuff though. What I'm really looking for is for this team to understand the magnitude and gravity of this moment. This is an opportunity to truly seize control of the 2023 season and put yourself in a position where you are overwhelmingly likely to end your season on a good note at the very least, and at the minimum, achieve some kind of success, some degree of success from this season that just a few weeks ago was completely slipping away from us. And you're doing it at home against a team that has traveled 3,000 miles to the West Coast, that is playing their backup quarterback, that is, even with their starting quarterback, a pretty average team. So I need to see that drive and that fire from that team to understand the moment. Can you take advantage of a situation like this where it's all teed up for you? It's not going to be easy. Like, nothing about this is going to be an easy game. There's nothing about this that is simple. But there's enough going on in this game that you have in your favor to take advantage of. All right, so to dive into the nitty-gritty a little bit here, that Steelers defense is obviously the number one thing that you're thinking about when you're talking about the Steelers, because their defense is good. Their defense is much better than their offense, so let's start there. That's not to say their defense is without issue. They give up a lot of yards. Teams move the ball on them. And then they clamp down in the red zone and they don't allow teams to score. They're, I think, like 22nd or something in yards allowed and only 7th or 8th in points allowed. So it's a team that bends and then does not break. Kind of like what Seattle wants to do. Seattle doesn't do a very good job of it. They have in the past, not this year so much. But Pittsburgh, they actually do a pretty dang good job of it. They are a team that they'll give up the yards outside the 20s. They'll let you move down into scoring position, but then they make a big play around the end zone to make it so you don't get that touchdown. You settle for the field goal, or sometimes you don't get the field goal. So I'm very aware of these things. And I think that, quite simply, the key is going to be we need our quarterback to play a very clean game. Doesn't have to be a big game. Doesn't have to be like 5 touchdowns. Doesn't have to be 800 yards or anything crazy. Just need him to play a clean game. Because when the opportunities are there for this team to score points, they need to be capitalized on. So when we do get down the field, when we do move the ball into scoring range, you can't have the turnovers. That was a thing that was plaguing this team for a little bit there. We've gotten away from it lately, which has been nice, but red zone turnovers. Cannot bring those back the way we had them against teams like the Bengals, the way we had them against even a team like the Cardinals. I remember that one as well. Can't have those. If you avoid those, I think you'll just eventually be able to outpace this team because of their problems on offense. But it has to happen. Can't just sit here and talk about it. This team has done a good job avoiding turnovers the last couple of games, but this one, it's very, very important that we find a way to win the turnover battle. And I know that's important for every game, but this has the makings. When you look at this game externally, this absolutely does have the makings of a game where we rack up some serious yardage, like 400 yards, 450 yards, but we only score like 17 points and we lose some close game, and it just makes you feel sick all week because you know you had the opportunity to easily win that game, and you just kept shooting yourself in the foot after getting the ball in good position. So, as for how that happens, I would love to be able to run the ball. I would love to be able to run the ball because Pittsburgh, their interior linebacker spot is a little bit of a mess right now. They don't have a Landon Roberts. They're dealing with other issues in that interior right now to where they're playing mostly backups to backups in that area of the field. And I would love to take advantage of that, but is this interior offensive line up for it? Because we didn't get Phil Haynes back this week. So we're looking at Damian Lewis, Evan Brown, and Anthony Bradford, which is about as bad an interior offensive line as you will find over most of the most recent games. They were good in Philly, I guess, or against Philly, I guess. But last week they played backups in Tennessee and they didn't look good. And we couldn't run the ball against Tennessee and their backups. So I would love to be able to run the ball and take advantage of that clear weakness, but I'm very aware of the fact that we just don't have the personnel up front right now to make it happen. So it won't surprise me if we have to abandon it. And if we do, then so be it. We've got our quarterback back. He knocked off the rust last week and played pretty well. We've got our receivers. DK should be good to go. Lockett good to go. JSN good to go. The Steelers are a defense that likes to play a lot of man coverage. They are a big man coverage team. Not a big fan of the zone stuff. So we got to find ways to put that to our advantage. I think DK Metcalf is a guy who can take advantage of man defense. If you try to put DK in man coverage, you're going to have a hard time keeping the lid on top of him. You're going to have a hard time dealing with him the way that some teams are able to take him out with zone. Now, the opposite is true for JSN. JSN's a guy who eats against zone, struggles against man, but if that's the case, then so be it. You have to find a way to take advantage of what the other defense does. Also, going on this defense right now, by the way, backups at safety. No Minkah Fitzpatrick, no Trenton Thompson, means they're playing some reserve players at the safety position. So you put the recipe together, and this sounds like a potential possibility for some big plays down the field to DK Metcalf. He gets behind a corner playing man coverage, safety blows his assignment, boom, he's over the top, he's gone, nobody's catching him. If you can isolate him against Levi Wallace, all the better. Whoever's up against Levi Wallace, you got to pick on him. So that's the matchup to watch for in that secondary. Patrick Peterson's probably going to be playing some safety because they're so deficient in those areas right now because of injuries. They got no choice. But in order for that to happen, the real sausage gets made with how this offensive line deals with the Pittsburgh defensive front. Mostly I'm talking about their edge rushers because they've got a really good 1-2 there with Watt and Highsmith. That defensive line brings a lot positive to the table as well. Keanu Benton's been really good as a rookie. They've got Ogunjobi, who's been, not great, but he's been okay. He's definitely seen better days, but he's still a pretty decent player. And they've got Hayward still up front there. He's really good, as always. So we got to give Geno Smith time to do those things. If we do not give Geno Smith time, then it might be hard for him to get the ball out quickly against this man coverage defense. So we need our tackles to hold up. Cross and Lucas. Need them to hold up. We probably need to help them. Probably need to do something a little bit special with that blocking scheme, because I know we try to get away with single cover blocking a lot of superstars on defense, the Micah Parsons of the world, the Aaron Donalds of the world, but it's time to stop messing around. I'm sorry. I know that we would prefer to be able to just do what we do, but I don't want that to happen and then watch Geno Smith get sacked 4 times by TJ Watt because we're trying to single cover him every play, and that's just not going to work consistently. So You've got to worry about that. Of course, that doesn't mean it's going to get in any easier on the other side with Highsmith, and also it means your weak interior offensive line is going to have a heck of a time dealing with that defensive line. But some tells me you got to do it, and if one of those guys beats you, I think that's a little easier to live with than having T.J. Watt beat you. Don't let it be the easy one. Don't let it be the obvious one. Don't let it be the clear one. So I think this game really comes down to the quarterback being able to hit throws, but I'm really looking to this offensive line. I'm really looking at this offensive line to give Geno time to hit throws down the field because with these safeties and this style of defense, there should be throws to hit down the field. You just have to give the quarterback the opportunity to hit them. Waldron, also on you to scheme it up the right way so it actually happens. And if those things go down, if those things all come together, I'm pretty sure we're going to win this game because that Steelers offense is not posing a huge threat right now. Mason Rudolph's coming off maybe the best game of his career, but he's Mason Rudolph. He's a backup quarterback. He's a mediocre quarterback. There's not much to say about him. He's got average mobility, average arm. The best you can say about him is that he's a veteran, so he's at least not going to lose his head in a hostile road environment. But I do believe you should be able to affect his abilities a little bit if you're a rowdy road home crowd, which I'm expecting this weekend at Lumen Field. So I would say that you should be able to take advantage of the fact that he's the one out there. As much as he's not a huge downgrade over Kenny Pickett or Mitchell Trubisky, like all three quarterbacks kind of feel like they're lumped in the same room. You still have to look at Mason Rudolph as probably being the least having the least upside of those three. Let's put it that way. And there is a little bit of a nicer floor with him because he was passable a few years ago when he started half the season for Pittsburgh. But we are talking about a very, very forgettable quarterback in pretty much all capacities. That being said, we do sometimes have a problem with quarterbacks like this, these veterans who will just take what the defense gives them over and over and over again. They're not going to try to push it down the field. They're not going to throw it up into double coverage. They're not going to put the ball in risky situations. So I'm very aware of the fact that he could play the kind of game that beats us. But we as a team need to recognize what's going on as it's going on and prevent it from happening. If he's just taking what the defense gives him, then you need to start playing more aggressively so he doesn't have that as an option. So I'm looking at that matchup, and I'm looking at the matchup with the offensive line. That's another big part of this, too. That Steelers offensive line is very lackluster. They've got Isaac Suamalo, who's good, but other than that, we are talking about a very, very forgettable crew of 5 blockers. I would say that our pass rush should be able to take advantage of what that Steelers team has up front. I would say that we should be able to get pressure on Rudolph like we did against Tannehill, and that's going to be a big part of this. If we can do that, hard for him to do all that much. Because if you let the game get into the hands of their skill position players, you're going to have a problem. You've got George Pickens, you've got Deontay Johnson, you've got Pat Freiermuth, who isn't an elite tight end or anything, but he's pretty good. And you've got Jalen Warren. Those are guys who you get the ball in their hands, it's going to be a problem. And straight up, if there's another thing in this game that I'm worried about, it would be the idea of them just being able to completely control the game on the ground. Because we have not been able to stop the run at all for like a month and a half now. It's been league worst run defense. So whatever we had going in the first part of the season is gone. We cannot do it anymore. So what I'm concerned about, and I think it's a good trade-off. I'd rather have good pass defense and bad run defense than the opposite. But there's definitely reason to be concerned, at least somewhat, that Pittsburgh's just able to control this game through the ground. So you got to get ahead early. You got to try to get ahead early in this game. It's a home game. It's 1 p.m., so you shouldn't come out sluggish for any particular definitive reason. You got to just jump on them, and you got to make sure they don't have that lean on the run game all day option there for them, because that's what happened against Tennessee, and they were almost able to win that game with a bunch of backups. And I think that's really most of what there is to say. I'm glad we have Witherspoon back. That's huge because George Pickens is a big problem, and if Pickens is out there against guys like Trey Brown and Mike Jackson, I think that could be a big issue for this defense. Even with a quarterback as lackluster as Mason Rudolph, he's capable of doing some really impressive things out there. I can't think of too much else going on in this game. They've got a good kicker, so if the game comes down to that, I don't feel good about that at all. They have a good special teams in general, so if the game comes down to special teams, I'm not feeling good. But just generally speaking, I do feel pretty good about this game. I think we get it. I say 20-17 again. Let's keep the streak going. Let's keep the streak alive. 20-17 Seahawks. Knock the Steelers out. Put yourself in a position to basically have things wrapped up before you play another game. And I mean, if you don't, then we're gonna have to start a dialogue after this one, because I know Pittsburgh's not a bad team, and I know they're capable of doing good things even with Mason Rudolph, which they proved last week. But this is an opportunity for you to take care of business, and you should be able to take care of business against a team that is missing this much. Even if you don't have K9, and I know that's a possibility here, we may not have Walker for this game. Even if you don't have him, there should be enough in this game that you can take advantage of to win. All right. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Might make another video later today. Probably going to be streaming throughout the day on Twitch. So come watch me if you want to. And, yeah. Just waiting for game day. See you guys later.